Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today, we have a fresh compilation of revenge stories for you. Our first story is about why you have to choose your friends carefully, because sometimes they can have bad intentions. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Fake friends try to take advantage one too many times. Today, I thought I'd share the story of Sam. Not the real name. Sam does not make friends easily. He's not good at small talk, and to make things worse, he's suspicious of people who are too friendly for the reasons below. Sam made a lot of money at a young age. I'm not going to say exactly what he did because I don't want him tracked down, but he made something that made him rich. Being a smart guy, Sam invested most of his money in long-term investments that will pay out a reasonable amount each month until he dies. So he doesn't live a rich life, but he never has to work again. A few years after his windfall, he got bored and decided to go back to college. There he met some people who enthusiastically pursued friendship with him. Making friends with them was so easy that, for a while, he was happy. He didn't find out until later that they'd learned about his wealth by searching for his name online. It started small. Occasionally, one of them would be short some money and ask Sam for a loan, then blow it off when he asked for it back. Sam started to get concerned, but he didn't want to lose his new friends. Then they all decided to go on vacation together to a well-known amusement park. They pressured him into paying for the tickets, flight, and hotel rooms. Sam tried to explain that month to month he wasn't getting enough money to pay for all this stuff, but they swore to him he'd be repaid and ramped up the social pressure on him. He eventually caved and took an advance on his next month's payment to pay for the vacation. Then, as if all that wasn't bad enough, they ditched him for most of the vacation. Whenever he'd try to hang out with them, they told him, well, we made some plans to meet these other guys, or we already ate. By the end of the vacation, Sam was forced to face the fact that they weren't really his friends. Sam was angry, and he had an idea while reading the local news. A local restaurant had created a dish that cost $1,000. It was mostly a publicity stunt, copying another restaurant that had gained a lot of publicity by doing the same thing, but Sam understood that his friends saw him as their ticket to the rich life. Sam started making sure that the friends saw mentions of this overpriced dish several times a day. Eventually it worked. They started suggesting to him that they should all go try this dish. Sam made it clear to them he was still paying off the vacation, and although he could get together enough cash to buy it for himself, he couldn't pay for their meals. They all said they understood, although they looked a little worried. He never overheard them saying it, but he knew they confused being a millionaire with having $1 million sitting in your checking account. The day of the meal came, they all ordered this $1,000 dish. The restaurant manager came out and asked them if they were certain they had the funds to purchase this meal. Each of them confirmed that they had the money and were ready to pay. Sam can't remember what was in the meal, but he said it was salty and slimy, like French fries soaked in water. As the end of the meal grew near, the friends seemed to be more and more nervous. At the end of the meal, everyone handed over their debit cards. Sam's cleared, and every other card was declined. They turned to Sam, saying things like, I don't know why it was declined. Can you help us out? One of them just slid the bill over to Sam with a smug grin. Sam replied honestly, I don't have enough money in my checking account to cover your bills. He then stood up and started to walk out. One of them called out, You can't just leave us like this. He replied, I made some plans to meet up with other guys. Sam left because he didn't want anyone else to try to make him pay for their meals. He only found out afterwards that the cops were called by the manager. The friends weren't arrested, but a police report was filed and they had to go to court. They had to pay both the restaurant bill and a large fine. Because they were in legal trouble, the university put them on probation. The best part, however, is that Sam told as many people as possible that they'd tried to run out on a bill, which is the crime that they were going to court and on probation for. Sam figured that most people wouldn't want to hear the whole story, and he was embarrassed that he'd been taken in, so he simplified it and implied that they'd simply tried to sneak out of a restaurant. To their fellow college students, this was enough to turn the friends into pariahs. Well played. And it's not your friend's job to finance your life. I feel bad for Sam. I'd like to be a genuine friend to someone like that. And our next story. Ex-girlfriend shafted me out of hundreds. I took her to court. Last year, I lived with my then-girlfriend. This turned out to be a huge mistake. Soon after moving in, it became clear that she expected me to cover her rent from time to time. As she was between jobs, I let this slide, expecting to be paid back in due course. It was a similar story with household bills. While she paid her share to begin with, she eventually refused to contribute. I asked her if she could just open an overdraft with her bank till she got more work, which would have been free of charge, but she refused. Within the first few months of living together, she got quite behind on rent and bills. When she finally got a job, she began to catch up on arrears, but was always reluctant to pay. I thought she might be reluctant because it left her with little money, which would be fair enough, but things continued this way even after she got a better job. When she refused to pay rent one month, I explained that this wasn't fair and insisted that she pay up. After a considerable outburst, she paid, but not without making it clear that this wasn't what she wanted to do. During this argument, I was in a different town working, and a few days later, she let me know that she'd moved out and broken up with me. I was upset with the breakup and further upset that she'd insisted that she didn't owe rent or bills, which left me in a dire financial position. To make a long story short, she realized her mistake and came back a few weeks later, but with a renewed conviction that she didn't owe me anything because her returning was payment enough. The next few months consisted of her threatening to leave at multiple points for not supporting her enough, despite me buying most of our food, letting her pay late, and bringing her lunch every day. She even repeatedly threatened to beat me one night after coming home drunk. I thought this was especially rude considering I'd stayed up late to make sure she got home safe. Other notable events were her and her mother having a deep discussion on how to leave me high and dry on rent. Yeah, her mother was a classy lady. And her getting verbally abusive that I wouldn't drop her name from the tenancy agreement. She must have thought I was stupid. Needless to say, the relationship wasn't meant to be and didn't last into the new year. Ex-girlfriend ended it. She eventually moved home but agreed to meet her obligations and pay her remaining half of the rent. Sometime after this had boiled over, I met a fantastic girl and we eventually got together. Happy days, I thought. Not quite. Ex-girlfriend discovered I had met someone else and absolutely lost her crap, calling me all the names under the sun, calling me out for betrayal, etc. She didn't consider that breaking up with someone might make them not want you anymore. Incensed, ex-girlfriend stopped paying. At the time, I hadn't been keeping track and thought she owed me around 300 pounds. After she calmed down, she agreed to pay. A few days passed with no payment when I got a message from her mother claiming everything was paid and to stop asking her daughter for monies already paid to you. She went on to say that any further requests for money could be treated as harassment. At this point, I was irritated by the entitlement and rudeness of the pair and went back through my bank statements to check exactly how behind on payment she was. It turns out the shortfall was more than double what I initially thought, so I prepared a formal letter of demand for payment and posted it to ex-girlfriend's address. Several days later, I get a call from the police saying that a harassment report had been made against me. I explained the situation, and the police confirmed that no harassment was made. I was surprised that ex-girlfriend would waste police time to try to get out of paying the debt and decided to take ProRevenge to obtain justice. I discovered that for the entire period of our tenancy, ex-girlfriend hadn't been paying council tax. Essentially, she hadn't told the council she lived there. I took it upon myself to inform the council that there was a second person living at the property avoiding tax. They were appreciative of this information and further appreciated me furnishing them with an up-to-date home address for tax dodger ex-girlfriend. In parallel, I took ex-girlfriend to court over the unpaid rent and bills using the tenancy agreement we signed and got the majority of it back. And our last story. This girl in the theater had her feet up on the back of my friend's chair. I was out to a movie with my friends last night. We come and sit down, and I realized pretty soon that this girl in the row behind us has her feet up on my friend David's seat. She's there with one of her friends, so David turns around and says something like, do you think you could put your feet down? And I think they said something in response, but I didn't hear it. The feet didn't go down. A few minutes later, David says, hey, will you get your feet off my chair? It's extremely rude. And they still don't budge. So I tell David that he should go find an employee and get them to talk to this girl. He does exactly that. And after a couple of minutes, an employee comes and talks to the girl. She's obviously pretty peeved, but begrudgingly agrees to put her feet down. After the employee leaves, she puts her feet right back up. At this point, I'm PO'd. Why is it so important to you that you have your feet on someone's chair? You're just being a brat. So I get out of my seat, walk up 2 rows, sit down in the seat directly behind this girl, and stick my foot on the back of her chair and push it forward. They both turn around to try to say something to me, but I can't actually hear them because the movie had started by this point, so I say, just watch the movie. I kept my foot up there the entire movie. It felt like I'd done wall sits for 2 hours, but I'm glad I did it. Stuff like this is why I love Alamo Drafthouse. They would eject the person after a second complaint. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.